If you're aware of thinking happening and you can see thoughts with discretion, in other words, if you can watch thoughts in such a way that you can see whether a thought is realistic or it's just a reaction, it's just an interpretation, because it's the thing when you say that I know thoughts aren't my thoughts. When you get more, when you look at thoughts and you're aware of thoughts, most of the thoughts will be useless thoughts. They'll be interpretations, they will be reactive, they will be the person, thinking. Those thoughts are thoughts that if you're being aware, if you're watching, if you're seeing it rather than identifying with the thoughts, right, then you are able to say that's not true. You're able to see that this thought is a thought that's coming from the idea that I'm a person thinking this thought, right? But there are other thoughts like, that are practical reality thoughts. They're, thoughts like, I have to go to the bathroom, or thoughts like, pay attention to the breath, right? So those thoughts you choose to own. So you see, it's not that all thoughts aren't your thoughts. All thoughts aren't your thoughts in one sense, but when you're paying attention and you're watching thoughts, there are thoughts that occur that you can see that you choose to be your thoughts, like why choose not to have the thought, to eat, or not to have the thought to use the bathroom. So those thoughts you choose to be your thoughts. So what I'm saying is that when you're aware, there is a natural discretion. In other words, you can see things for what they really are. Right? If you're not aware and you're identified with the thoughts, right, you may be aware of the thoughts, but even when you're aware of the thoughts, they don't occur to you as whether they're true or not. You're just aware of the thoughts. Well, if you're just aware of the thoughts and they don't occur to you whether they're true or not, right, then there's still an identification, right? But when you're aware as awareness, the awareness sees the person. When the person tries to show up, the awareness sees the person and sees the thoughts, right? So that's the thing, that because you have to remember that the bottom line here, what this is all about, the heart of the matter here is for us to understand that the truth is, reality is, that there is no person, right? That there is no identity, that awareness is not a person. This is the heart of the matter. This is what we're, the truth shall set you free. What's the truth? The truth is that there is no person. And if there is no person, there is no suffering. So that's the heart of the matter. That's what we're doing, is we're sitting here, right? We're sitting here. When we move attention away from the breath, the thought process is where the person gets created. So when you move attention away from the breath, all there is awareness in the breath. The truth is now there. So over time, that allows you to begin to recognize that when you're aware of thought, you can also be aware of the thought in a way where you see how it's generating the idea that you're a person. And when you're aware that it's generating the idea that you're a person, when you're aware that the thoughts are not true thoughts, they're interpretations, they're reactions, right? Then you withdraw your interest in that. You withdraw your attention from that. And when I say you withdraw your attention from that, I don't mean you like a person withdraws your attention from that, right? you just see that it's not relevant, right? If something's not relevant, right, then it's of no interest if it's not relevant, right? But the idea that it's of no interest is natural to awareness. Awareness is simply aware that, that this is a thought-generated reality that produces suffering. And so you naturally begin to lose interest. And it's not, again, it's not something that you're doing. This is the complication. It's not something that you're doing. Simply by being aware, you notice, for example, the way this might translate into the application in everyday life. By practicing being aware, what begins to happen is as you live your life and you wake up in the morning and it's raining and there's a thought like, oh, it's a miserable day, you immediately recognize that that's not realistic, that's not true. And therefore that thought is no longer, that thought no longer has the power to create the idea that's the experience you're having, that it's a miserable day. Because you see it for what it is, it's not relevant, it's not realistic, right? And so now you're able to be with the rain, and it's just rain. In fact, you can be with the rain, and when you're just there aware of what's happening, the experience of it is fulfilling. It's just raining. So that's the process. It's the thing that makes it complicated is that in the beginning, when we begin to practice, there will be this confusion that continues in terms of, that's what I think you're describing. There's this confusion that continues in terms of, am I meditating or is meditating just happening? And that clears up over time, just by, that's why the idea of practicing, It's like riding a bike, we're learning about the idea of know that the person isn't real. So that gives us something to deal with when we're meditating, right? So and it begins to be like riding a bike, that sometimes you're lost in thought, sometimes you're aware of thought, sometimes you're not only aware of thought, but you can see the thought is unrealistic and untrue, right? And so that's the practice. And as you continue to do it, it's like riding a bike. At some point, it starts to become natural. You start to just by sitting there meditating, just by sitting there letting go of attaching yourself to the thoughts, by sitting there just making contact with reality in terms of the breath, right? That you start to have a sense of it. You start to have you start to be aware of their absence of being a person. There's an awareness of the absence of there being a person. And that's different. That feels different than when there's a person. It's not heavy. It doesn't have weight to it. It's not, there's no suffering. There's no, it starts to just reveal itself to you, right? And then, the other part of it is that over time, through the practice, eventually you'll begin to see that things aren't affecting you the same way anymore. That as things happen during the day, you can be with them as life, you're being with life instead of being with your idea about life. And when you're being with life, it doesn't have the suffering quality to it. It's just, okay, that's what's there, right? And you're more free to be skillful in relating to it because you're seeing it for what it is. You're seeing what's really happening instead of your interpretation of it. And this is just a natural process that goes on. You can't make that happen. We're not trying to do it. See, if you're trying to do it, then you obviously are being a person. Part of the reality that we're experiencing when we're present is that there's nothing to try. Trying is not necessary, right? There's nothing to try. You can't do anything about the way it is. All you can do is let the way it is be the way it is. And when you're letting it be the way it is, part of what you're letting is you're letting you be the way you are with the way it is. And when you're letting you be you are with the way it is, it's just awareness of what is. And then as time passes, it becomes more apparent. You become more, it becomes more, it becomes more revealed to you that that's all there is. That's the non-duality. It becomes more real to you that what's happening is it. That's all there is. And you can let go and into that. You can let go and allow that. And when I say you can let go and allow that, again, I don't mean a person, right? But that's just what happens naturally. When you see what's not real and what's not true, right? You now have access to what is real and is true because you're seeing the difference, right? Where in the everyday course of events, people aren't seeing the difference. I've been attending this week-long intensive through the internet because of the pandemic, but there are people that were there in the Zendo at the center doing it. It was a week of intensive practice and talks and whatnot. But you could attend via Zoom if you wanted to. And so I've been listening to his talks, and he told a story that I thought was very powerful and very useful, and I'll see if I can recreate that for you. Because I think it really points out what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing here, what it's all about. And the story is about a swordsman, about a warrior swordsman in Japan, right? And this swordsman was the greatest the best swordsman, right? And so when he would walk down the street, or when he would ride his horse down the street, the other swordsmen on the street would piss their pants in fear just to see him, right? And they wouldn't touch their sword because they were afraid, that if they touched their sword, that he would kill them. So this was how great this swordsman was. He was the best, right? But he experienced that he didn't have any relationship to people. It was a lonely experience to be the best swordsman and so forth. He wasn't experiencing it to be satisfying, right? Which is the beginning of seeking, right? So he decides to go to a monastery and become a monk. So he goes to this monastery and becomes a monk, and he stays there for 10 years. And even in the monastery, he was recognized to be a strong personality, a great personality, in terms of his character and whatnot. But he just, as a monk, he just did the everyday chores, nothing special, sweep the floor, practice meditation, meet with your teacher, and so forth. So after 10 years, he goes to the teacher in the monastery and says, "I would like to wander. Do I have your blessing?" And the teacher said, "Yes, you have my blessing. You go ahead and wander." So he leaves the monastery and he's walking down the road. And there he is walking down the road in his monk robe. And the original monk robes were made of rags sewn together, not like today where they have, these silk things and everything. The original. So he's got this monk robe on, and he's got this mat that's rolled up, and that's his only possessions. And the mat is rolled up so that if any time he wants to practice, meditate, or prostrate, you know what prostrations are, right? That he can unroll the mat and go down and do it. So that's all he has. So he's walking on the road, and this swordsman comes up on a horse next to him and looks over and then keeps riding, and then he stops and backs his horse up, and he looks down and he says, "Aren't you the great swordsman that disappeared 10 years ago?" And the monk didn't answer. He just looked down. And so then he leaned over from the horse and put his face right in the monk's face and said, "You are the great swordsman that disappeared 10 years ago. Look at you. You're disgusting." and he spits in his face. And the monk just keeps looking down. He doesn't say anything, doesn't move. And then the horseman sits back up on his horse and rides away. And then the monk says to himself, what was I doing for 10 years? What did I get from spending 10 years in the monastery, right? And then tears rolls down his face, and he sees that when this warrior spit in his face, that the spitting in his face was the same as a raindrop hitting him in the face. It had no significance. It had no meaning. And when he saw that, he fell down on his knees and turned towards the monastery and bowed and was moved to cry in appreciation for what had happened. Right? So this is a good story to see why we're here. Because life is going to bring to all of us spits in the face. It's like one of the other things the teacher said during the week is he said, what will it take for most of us to see what's really going on, to understand the impermanence of life? What will it take? Do you have to be punched in the face by impermanence? It's going to take that, right? Because sooner or later, all of us are going to be exposed to a punch in the face by impermanence. Some significant loss, some, diagnosis, terminal diagnosis, some illness, some shocking event that was, that you didn't see coming. And so by practicing meditation and by learning about the truth, we're preparing ourselves to be in life, so that you can be in life in a way where when these shock waves come, when these punches come, when these challenges come, right, you can be there and have them spit in your face and experience it as this is just life. It's just life. In the last couple of days, I've had something very significant happen in my life. That was that in the ordinary way that people would look at things would be a very traumatic experience, right? Very disturbing experience. And I was shocked at how that wasn't true. Even though the experience stimulated some strong emotions, right, and generated some thoughts, right, that would be thoughts about tragic thoughts or dramatic thoughts and everything. I was aware of all that, right, but I wasn't being that. I wasn't in the drama. I was aware that because again, we have to understand that my mind has not wound down so that there's nothing that's going to get stimulated to come up, right? But if I see it what it is, I am not in that story. I'm aware that there's a story, but I'm not in that story, and so I am not upset. I'm not upset. I am aware that this is life. Whatever happens in the world, in your experience, you can always say this is life. Whether it's wonderful or it's terrible, it's life. And that's one of the things that happens when you are awake. You see things for what they are. You see life is the way life is. It's unpredictable. There are things that are going to happen to the body. The body's going to get sick and die and so forth, right? But there's no surprises anymore. Do you know what I mean? You understand that this is life. And then as you continue to do the practice, you begin to have the experience that it's not just that this is life, but I am this life. What's happening is all there is. That's what's happening. There's nobody separate from it to suffer about it. It's just what's happening. And what's happening is that there is this person. I'm not this person. That's part of what's happening. There is this person. This person has a personal history, a mind, right? But I am not this person and I am not this mind. That's just life. That's part of what's happening is this person. But I am not that. I am what it is. I am what the experience is that's happening. It's very difficult to talk about, right? To understand. But it's important to understand it as best you can, because you need to understand why we're doing this. You know, what the point is of it. And you need to understand what's possible, that it is possible to be in the world and not be of the world, to be in the world and experience the kingdom of heaven on earth, experience life as a wonderful reality, including the fact that there are things that happen that are challenging, but there are also things that are happening that are wonderful. And you see the whole thing together instead of, just wanting it to be a certain way. I encourage you to continue to practice consistently and to really spend time every day to learn, keep learning, keep deepening your understandings, because one of the things that I saw in the last few days is that my understandings about life and about the truth and about reality really supported me and helped me to do my practice in a way that bared fruit, that produced fruit. So it's not just mindlessly practicing. It's not just practicing hoping magic happens, right? That there is an appreciation and an understanding of the practice and why I'm practicing. And that makes it naturally something that I'm motivated to do, and to do with sincerity. Do you know what I mean? To do really with a high intention, and then it starts to produce fruit.